Good evening, Virgo. Nobody told you to expect this. And that is precisely the point, precisely the thing that makes what is approaching so significant, so charged, so impossible to fully prepare for, even with the most generous amount of advance warning. Because the communications that change things are never the ones we saw coming. Never the ones we had time to brace for, to script our response to organize ourselves around before they arrived. They are the other kind. The ones that find us mid sentence in our ordinary day, mid thought in our ordinary life, completely unprepared and therefore completely open, which is, it turns out, the only state in which certain truths can actually land. Something is about to land. I have been sitting with the collective energy of tonight's reading for a while now, turning it over, feeling into its different dimensions, trying to locate the most accurate language for what I keep encountering. And the word that keeps returning, the one that feels most honest to the quality of what is forming in the field around you, is not simply communication. It is detonation in the most precise sense of that word, not destruction, not harm, but the release of something compressed. The specific, sudden, atmospherically altering release of energy that has been building under pressure for so long that its emergence, when it finally comes, changes the quality of everything around it. The air after a detonation is not the same air. It carries something, a charge, a clarity, an altered quality of presence that was not there before. The air between you and this person is about to change. Soft sigh. In the symbolic architecture of the soul's movements, what governs this reading sits at the intersection of two powerful archetypes: Mercury, the messenger, the swift and unpredictable carrier of information that transforms the situations it enters, and the Eight of Wands, the card of rapid communication, of things that have been held in suspension, suddenly released into motion, of arrows in flight that cannot be recalled and were never intended to be. When these two energies converge, what they produce is not the gradual unfolding of a situation that gives everyone time to adjust. They produce the sudden, clarifying, all at once quality of a communication whose arrival divides time into before and after with the clean precision of something that was always inevitable but had not yet found its moment. The moment has been found. Let me speak about the nature of explosive communication, because the word explosive carries its own weight and deserves to be handled with care. What makes a communication explosive is not volume, not anger, not the dramatic confrontation that the word sometimes conjures in the imagination. What makes it explosive is compression, the specific quality of something that has been held under pressure for a sustained period, feelings unexpressed, words unspoken, truths circling without landing, the full weight of what exists between two people accumulating in the contained space of the unaddressed, finally finding its release all at once. The explosion is proportionate to the compression. And what has been compressed in this particular situation has been building for longer than either of you has been entirely comfortable acknowledging. The release, when it comes, will be total, not gradual, not the careful, measured, strategically paced communication of someone who has had time to organize their thoughts into something presentable. The real thing, the unedited, unmanaged, straight from the source thing, which is paradoxically the most valuable kind of communication available. Because what is said without the protective editing of careful construction carries the truth in a way that the polished version almost never does. It lands differently. It reaches places the managed version cannot reach because it is traveling from a place the managed version never visits. For some of you in this collective reading, the explosive communication is coming from a place of feeling that has simply exceeded its container. Someone who has been trying genuinely, with varying degrees of success, to manage what they feel about you, to keep it at a size that does not demand expression, to exist in the daily reality of their life without the feeling constantly pressing against the walls of its containment. The management has been failing, not catastrophically, not visibly, not in ways that the outside world has been able to observe, but in the private, daily accumulating way of something that is slightly too large for the space it is being kept in, that requires more energy to contain each day than it required the day before, that is becoming less a choice and more an exhaustion. The exhaustion has reached its limit. And what follows the limit is not more management, it is the release of what was being managed. Direct, unfiltered, arriving with the full force of everything that accumulated during the period of containment. For others, the explosive communication arrives not from an overflow of feeling, but from a specific event, something that happened, something that shifted the landscape of their interior life sufficiently that the version of the situation they had been maintaining in their mind became suddenly completely untenable. A realization, a moment of clarity so complete that the comfortable ambiguity of the previous arrangement, the careful not saying, the mutually maintained pretense that things were simpler than they are, became impossible to sustain past the moment of its arrival. And impossible to sustain means only one thing, that the thing which was being sustained must now be said. What must be said has been waiting for a long time, longer, perhaps, than you know, longer than the surface of your interactions would have suggested was possible, because the surface in this particular connection has been doing a significant amount of work on behalf of everything that was not being allowed to show. The surface is about to stop doing that work. Soft sigh. I want to speak about what you will feel when this arrives. Because forewarning is the specific gift of a reading like this one, not the ability to control what comes, but the ability to receive it from a place of groundedness rather than pure reaction. And what you will feel in the first moments of the explosive communication maybe more complex than any single word can capture. There will be something like shock. Even with this preparation, even knowing something is approaching the specific quality of shock that belongs to something landing more directly, more honestly, more completely than anything that came before it. The shock of the unfiltered truth hitting the air between two people and becoming real in a way that the implied, the suggested, the carefully not quite said version of it never was. Alongside the shock, something like relief, the specific, bone deep, finally exhaling relief of something that has been unspoken between you finally being spoken, of the accumulated weight of everything that existed in the space between what was felt and what was said, becoming in a single communication no longer a weight but a fact. Facts are lighter than secrets. Always. Even the difficult ones. And beneath both of those, something quieter, more essential, more lasting than either, the recognition that what is happening is real, not managed, not constructed for effect, not the careful presentation of feeling that has been edited for palatability. Real in the full, raw, completely undefended sense of something that has come from the deepest available place in a person and arrived at the deepest available place in you. Real things change things. That is perhaps the most important truth about explosive communication, not its drama, not its volume, not the way it disrupts the managed surface of ordinary interaction, the way it changes things, the before and the after. The specific and irreversible quality of a communication that, once it has occurred, makes the previous arrangement, the careful silence, the managed distance, the comfortable ambiguity, permanently unavailable as a place to return to. There is no returning to what came before this, and that is not a loss. That is a threshold crossing. Uh, I also want to speak to something that the word explosive can obscure the tenderness that lives inside even the most charged communications when they are coming from a place of genuine feeling. Because explosive does not mean harsh, does not mean careless, does not mean that what is coming toward you carries within it anything designed to wound. What I feel in the energy of tonight's reading, beneath the charge, beneath the compression and its release, is something that is almost heartbreakingly tender in its honesty. The tenderness of someone who has finally stopped protecting themselves from the vulnerability of being completely honest with you, who has decided, in whatever private moment the decision was made, that the exposure of their truth to your knowledge is less frightening than another day of carrying it alone. That the risk of your response, whatever it is, however it lands, however it reorders the space between you, is worth taking in exchange for the relief of no longer performing the absence of what they feel. Receive the tenderness alongside the charge, alongside the shock and the relief and the recognition. Receive the tenderness. because it is the truest part of what is coming. The part that survived everything the management tried to do to it. The part that is arriving precisely because it could not be managed away, could not be reduced to something small enough to live quietly in the contained space of the unspoken. It grew. Everything genuine grows in the dark, and what this person has been keeping in the dark about you has been growing quietly and without their full permission into something that now requires the full size of its expression. That full size is what is approaching. That full size is what the explosion carries. And that full size, when it lands, when it fills the air between you with the specific and unmistakable quality of something finally completely real, is going to ask something of you. Soft sigh. Not performance, not the managed response of someone who has prepared their reaction in advance and delivers it from a safe emotional distance. Presence. The specific, courageous, completely unprotected presence of someone who meets the full thing with their full self, who does not diminish what is being offered by receiving it at arm's length, who does not protect themselves from the impact of something genuine by keeping their own genuineness carefully off stage. Be there for it, all the way there. In the full living, breathing, feeling reality of who you are, which is, it turns out, exactly what called this communication into being in the first place. The specific and irreplaceable quality of your presence, the way you exist in the world, the particular frequency you carry that this person encountered and could not, despite sustained effort, encounter anywhere else. That frequency is what the explosion is aimed at. That frequency is what it has always been aimed at, even when the aim was disguised as distance, even when the compression was being maintained as something that looked from the outside like indifference. It was never indifference. It was always the accumulated force of everything genuine finding its way, finally, toward the only thing that was ever capable of receiving it completely. Get ready, not with your armor, not with the careful positioning of someone who has been hurt before and has learned to receive significant communications from behind protective glass. With your actual self, open, grounded, present in the specific, complete, entirely sufficient way that you have always been present when you allowed yourself to be before the armor felt necessary, before the distance felt safer, before the management of your own openness became a habit rather than a choice. You do not need the armor for this. What is coming is not something to be defended against. It is something to be received with the full, open, completely yourself quality of someone who knows their own worth well enough to let something real reach them without flinching. Something real is reaching for you right now in whatever private, pressurized, finally exceeded its limit space this person is inhabiting as they prepare to say the thing that the compression would not allow them to contain any longer. It is coming with everything it has, with all the force of everything that was held back and all the tenderness of everything that survived the holding, direct, unedited, aimed entirely at you. Oof, be exactly who you are when it arrives. That is all the preparation that was ever necessary, and it is more than enough. If this collective reading found you at exactly the right moment tonight, if something here named what is approaching before it arrived and gave you solid, unshakable ground to stand on when it does stay close, subscribe and come back. Because what explodes into the space between you and this person in the days ahead is a story that deserves to be witnessed all the way through its most honest and most extraordinary chapter. And the next reading will be there for every word of it.